our new race politics, it's so destructive. I mean, you've got activists running around claiming to see racism where none exists and just creating hatred and suspicion and division by bigging themselves by this kind of stuff, finger pointing. A terrible example, again involving Greens Senator Lidia Thorpe, are you surprised? Who identifies as Aboriginal, has even called her white father a racist. I've interviewed him before, you know how hurt he is. Right now, we have Australian Defence Force people not just rescuing Afghans in Afghanistan, we have them here helping Aborigines at home with the vaccine rollout. And, well, that sounds wonderful, right? I mean, a moment of unity. But now check what Greens Senator Lidia Thorpe thinks of that in response to this question.
I wanted to just mention the ADF personnel who are scrambling to assist with the vaccination rollout amongst the Aboriginal communities of Western New South Wales as well. Why has the government not taken a second thought with this? Why do they continue to release our ADF to assist with this program and not people more connected and centre within the Aboriginal community, do you think?
Systemic racism. You know, that's what we're dealing with here. It's a system that is stacked against us. And this is a perfect example of that. You know, sending the police and the army to communities who are affected by deaths in custody by the police, it just doesn't make sense.
I was joined earlier by someone who will join Lidia Thorpe in that Senate, someone also with an Aboriginal mother, but someone more into healing than dividing. I'm talking about Jacinta Price, Deputy Mayor of Alice Springs, now the Coalition's top Senate candidate at the next election. I asked her whether she agreed. Sending in the army to help Aboriginal communities, is that really proof of our racism?
Look, anyone who would like to stigmatise the police and the army in a situation like this where we're faced with a pandemic that is clearly life-threatening and can be utterly devastating as it spreads through Indigenous communities is doing Australians a disservice, is doing Aboriginal people a disservice. I find it, in my opinion, deeply concerning, deeply disturbing that someone who has those responsibilities as a leader would try to create that stigma as well as try to paint Indigenous Australians as victims once more. I'm sure people are over it. There's got to be something else that she's got to be concerned with.
But it's not just painting Aborigines as victims. I also think there's a sin in painting the ADF as and police as somehow hostile to their interests. I mean, who on earth does that help? I would have thought that you'd scream racism if we didn't actually send the ADF to help as well, a win-win. But I just wonder, Jacinta, I mean, you've seen this game being played for a long time too, seeing racism where it doesn't exist. I get the strategy, it whips up the base, it gets that minority of people, they only need 10 or 15% of the vote anyway, it gets that minority of people who want to see the worst in everything and feel themselves better. But I'm just wondering, for the Greens, is that actually long-term a winning strategy?
I don't think it is a winning strategy, particularly as we're faced with a pandemic. I mean, I think it's potentially life-threatening that the Greens would do this, which would in fact it could deter some Aboriginal people from wanting to go and be vaccinated and saving their lives. And you're right, because at the beginning of the pandemic, when it first hit, we had an Indigenous man, Thomas Mayer, who's a union member, write an opinion piece in NITV suggesting that if the Morrison government didn't do anything to support Indigenous Australians, then it could be seen as genocide. So here we are. The Morrison government is doing everything, using the ADF, using our frontline resources, the human beings, Australian human beings, who are also, no doubt, there's Indigenous frontline workers, part of the ADF, part of the police force, who are doing what they can to save the lives of Indigenous Australians. And yet, once again, it's like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't when it comes to the Greens and when it comes to the extreme left. And really, they need to pull their heads in. We're dealing with people's lives here.
I think there's also a wider danger for me, Jacinta. And you might think I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating, I don't know. But it's like, physics. To every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. You get people screaming racism targeted at the white society, so-called. You get then a pushback from white racists. And the two groups then, they feed off each other and radicalise us all. I just think that's so dangerous. I mean, you're already seeing ASIO warning about the growth of neo-Nazis. I'm not surprised that the two are going hand in hand. The kind of left-wing racism, this hostile stuff from the likes of Lidia Thorpe and the growth of neo-Nazism in this country.
That's exactly right. I mean, radicalism, in whatever form it takes, we don't need any of that right now when we're dealing with a pandemic. And of course, when you try to look for racism where it doesn't exist, what you do is you encourage the nut jobs and the real racists to come out and to come out stronger and to come out harder. And we certainly don't need that right now. Certainly COVID-19 does not discriminate. It goes for any human being, regardless of the colour of your skin. So right now, what we don't need is extreme radicalism on either side. And if you're a leader of this country, you shouldn't be encouraging that in any way, shape or form. There's a lot of misinformation already out there. And what you need to focus on is pushing the message to Aboriginal people, vulnerable Aboriginal people, to get vaccinated, look after themselves and look after their families. That's the only message that should be going out there. There shouldn't be this push for a racial divide in a time like this. This is a time when we need to come together.
Jacinta Price, hurry to the Senate. We need your voice there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Andrew.